for coming, and thanks for everyone who's tuning in. We appreciate you all. This is Inner City Circle, intergenerational show of Boston-based artists. We are happy to have a closing reception with all of you today. This show is really important for us to help curate along with DAP and to really understand how artists of color in the city of Boston are really exploring arts. And through all these different generations of artists, we're able to see some similarities as well as some differences of their experiences. So, if you want to explain who we are.
Yeah, that's a little bit about the show. And for those who don't know, DAP is the Dorchester Art Project. You should definitely check them out over on Dorchester Ave and Phillips Corner. But we are Hoodgrown Aesthetic. Yes. We are a podcast that features and highlights artists of color living in Boston and all over the world. We have 6 segments, and we have a new episode every Monday, whether it be episodes where we are talking about news or highlighting artists of color, or our White Wall reviews, which have come out once a month. And we go to a show in Boston at a local museum. We were just at the Museum of Fine Arts, but we've been to the Ethelbert Cooper Gallery at Harvard University. We've been to the ICA. We've been to the Isabella Stewart Gardner, all over, Peabody, Essex, all over, just reviewing artists of color and shows that feature multiple artists of color or just one. So that's a little bit about our White Wall review. So we have different content that comes out every Monday, but you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, at Hoodgrown Aesthetic, and you can also go to our website, hoodgrownaesthetic.com. Follow us there. We are on Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, Stitcher, the list goes on. Definitely go ahead and follow us. But thank you so much for coming. We're excited to host our first ever panel here at the Strand Theater in Dorchester, down the street from Roxbury, my hood, my home. We are Boston natives, myself being from Roxbury, Althea being from Mission Hill, Althea aka Daughter of Contrast. But without further ado, we want to get straight to the panel and introduce our artists, but we'll let them take it away.
So if you could each introduce yourselves, maybe say your name, medium, some concepts in your art if possible, and if you could also point to the location of the art in the actual gallery space, that'd be cool so folks can look over.
Do it to the other side. My name is Rixy. How's it going? I'm just going to point first. This is my character back here. And I typically like to do women kind of intertwined with their own space. And sometimes it could just be kind of nature or just themselves. And it has this like kind of concept of sensuality and intimacy with the soft sensitiveness of characters, but at the same time I love cartoons and I love like the going crazy stuff too. So there is always this like kind of a lot of storytelling within like these cartoons that I like to make because all I watch is cartoons. I do a lot of like mixed media work, and I also say interdisciplinary. Typically I'll make paintings, and that's usually like the straight visual I like to make, and it's very direct, but I do like to incorporate sculptural and interactive things also, so it's very immersive and kind of bringing us in that space of my characters and my cartoons.
Hello, so my name is Cotard. I don't know if I should look this way or that way.
Anywhere you want, it's okay.
Yeah, so I'll point first. That is one of my paintings, and then there's one back there. I don't know if they can see it. But my work, primarily, I don't know if I would say painting is my primary source of depicting images, but I think I have a variety of different ways of kind of creating. One thing that I would say is definitely a medium for me is definitely the idea process. I typically like to have the medium, or specifically the material that I'm using, relate to the concept that I'm trying to depict. And so that takes many forms, whether it's paint, whether it's multimedia, acrylic, watercolor. And I would say it typically stays within the 2D-dimensional items. But anyways, the concepts that I definitely use within my work is definitely overarched by the theme of culture. My culture personally, and I use my culture as a means to kind of enter the understanding of other people's cultures and how they might feel about it. And so Yeah, that's primarily it, and kind of referencing Haiti throughout my work in various means, and my childhood and my past. So it's really considering who I am in all sorts of ways.
My name is Lawrence Pierce. My friends call me Larry. I'm a visual artist, photographer, actor, composer, and my work of late leans towards the political. My two pieces down there on the end, the first one, it's called El Muro, and it has to do with the immigration situation. And there's a legend at top that translates into English as please remove all belts and shoelaces. And if you can see, there's a woman's adult sneakers here and baby shoes. This is what they tell you when you're in jail. And so what I'm addressing is the urgency of the losing of the soul of this country. This country is built on immigrants, okay? There was a woman, she was the governor of Texas, who was famous for saying, this was when they had the English only thing, and she was famous for saying, God damn it, if English is good enough for Jesus, okay? So this is what we are losing, the sense of the strength of this country, which is our diversity. And so my work reflects on that. Also, the second painting is called Dangling Skips, and you see a very abstract and surrealistic piece with a pair of my sneakers dangling in front of it. And that's like a reflection of, I don't know if you've ever been in a city where you look up at the telephone lines and you see a pair of sneakers dangling off them. I thought that was something that only happens in the Bronx, where I'm from. That happens all over the world. That happens in China, it happens in Africa. I mean, what is it with people throwing sneakers over the telephone lines?
And you never see them do it.
No,
Somehow
no.
they're
Yeah,
there.
It takes somebody
you know? And some of them look pretty new too, so that's a reflection on that. So I thank you for inviting me, and I'm in very good company. It's a beautiful show.
Awesome. So we're going to get started with the first question, official question of the panel. We want to know how the city of Boston has supported or inspired you as an artist.
If at all.
That's the
Or
good
how could they
part.
do that?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that's the good part. I was born here, but I moved around a lot when I was younger. So when I came back, I had the idea that actually compared to where I was before, there wasn't as many opportunities, which is why I came here. But at the same time, it's like those opportunities are very specific. It doesn't mean they're just opportunities for everybody, or if they are, there's hidden opportunities and things like that. So it definitely makes you question your mentality and your work ethic. I think that was like my biggest thing with learning. I was telling Rocky earlier, like with like school and things like that. It's just, it really kind of molds you into a person that's like, how bad do you really want it? And that's kind of inspiring in that way, because I'm like, okay, I see my community and I love my communities, and I think that's what was the most inspirational part of being here, was being from Roxbury and being able to come back and still see how Roxbury is, like, and going and visiting my old elementary school, and my teacher still remembered me and things like that. Like, it was really lovely. So I think there was inspiration between like the community warmth, but also the influence and inspiration to like work hard to get through past certain like barriers on our community. So
It's like the lack of support kind of supported you or motivated you in a way.
for sure, yeah.
It was its own form of support. Anybody else have any thoughts, insights?
Well, Boston is a political city, and as artists, especially artists of color, you got to go and get what you want. You got to go and find the people who are empowered to give you what you want. We invite, I don't know if you're familiar with Susie Smith. She has a fantastic gallery in Dorchester. And we invited both chiefs of arts and culture to her gallery, where we had a group of artists come and talk to her. And our main complaint was that we're on the back burner. We're tired of getting the information last. You know, when things are happening, we usually find out about it a day late and a dollar short. So things are slowly beginning to change. I'm encouraged by some of the opportunities that I've been granted. Someone put my name in for a seat at the table exhibit at the Edward Kennedy Institute, so I have a Martin Luther King chair there. It's free. You guys should go check it out. It's a beautiful exhibit. These artists went wild. Shirley Chisholm is famous for saying that if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. So they invited artists to make these crazy folding chairs and have them on the table. So got into that. So in other words, my point is there are opportunities for artists of color, but they're the opportunities that we make happen. Kenyatta knows that. Kenyatta's the main man when it goes to going out and telling people what he wants and what he expects, and I admire that.
I would have to say for me, I think my lens comes from like the educational piece where, like, you know, I went to Boston Arts Academy, and I think beforehand I had not really been connected with much of a community of artists or really been made to be aware of it. Just thinking about, you know, in middle school, art class was the first thing to be cut off, stuff like that. And I think those kind of concepts are consistently happening. But you know, furthering the process, I think it's been individuals in Boston that have really kind of taken me under their wing and kind of really supported me and helped me to really understand my own artistic direction. But otherwise, I think there are certainly opportunities that I've been made aware of, and it's still kind of like individuals who are part of the framework that are supporting me. And I think there are methods, but they're not clear. And I think when you think about accessibility and making things clear to different individuals, and as you mentioned, you know, different individuals sharing information or recommending you, I think that's been my primary sense of support. But in terms of my own kind of seeing the opportunities, I don't think I've seen as much of that present.
Well, you guys are leading into our next question, like, flawlessly. I believe it's like you have the questions in front of you or something. But how do you think the registered artist housing and grants have made a difference for artists of color? You guys talk a little bit about those opportunities, but what has, like, the city provided that has allowed you to kind of push your artistry, if at all? I'll keep adding that at all of my questions.
I think those opportunities are few and far between. And I think that housing for artists, housing period in Boston is desperately needed. I'm from New York, I've lived in San Francisco, I lived in Jersey City, where housing is just ridiculous. You know, people are being gentrified out of their neighborhoods left and right, but especially artists. And it's a phenomenon that creative people are all too familiar with. Artists will move into a place like the Piano Factory and they'll make it hip, you know. And next thing you know, dentists and lawyers and stuff are moving in and they're tripling and tripling the rents. So yeah, we are in need of we need affordable housing period, but definitely affordable studio space and performance space and gallery space for artists, and this is what I'm working towards right now.
Do you all have other feelings about opportunities you've been access to? Like, I know the two of you have had the ability to make a lot of murals in the city and in the state. Do you think those opportunities were something that you were expecting out of the city, or is this kind of, were you kind of like, oh, you guys are actually gonna do something for us? Like, I feel like that's what I've seen a lot with, like, the mural projects that have been coming out, particularly.
I think for me, I think my main connection with it is the opportunity grant and things like that. I would say, in terms of housing, I don't know if I've seen anything that's like affordable to somebody who's an artist. not that I've seen, just period there. But in terms of grants, I think there are things that kind of make it possible to continue making art, but then I think in supporting artists, there's a variety of different things to consider. You know, in my essence as an artist, I think there's like the aspect of, yeah, I have to work a full-time job in order to make artwork, but then working a full-time job also means subtracting from the creation. So those things exist, and I think that is kind of like the accessibility piece. How do I become an artist that shares my viewpoints, meanwhile supporting myself? How do we make that accessible to somebody who's kind of starting their artistic career or has been doing it for quite some time? And even that, I think about supporting those that have been artists for quite some time, and having them continue to have access to their space and not just kind of taken out from under them for those same kind of professional folks.
I think when it comes to some of these opportunities, they're interesting and they're tricky because there can be opportunities out there, and if you find them and you're lucky enough to kind of go after it, they can still be very particular about what they do accept. And I think sometimes, like a place like Boston or Massachusetts, some of those opportunities are for more educational, more community-based things, which is awesome. It's great. I'm an educator myself. But at the same time, like, they're still trying to find compromises on the things that they will allow from artists, and I think that's sometimes can restrict those opportunities. So even like, you know, our people like Go5 and Pro Black and, you know, traditional graffiti writers, they're still gonna, even with them doing more exhibitional forms of it and doing murals and street art and all these mural projects that are coming up, there's still like this compromise of like, we'll take it if you can do this, you know, cover this thing up, or don't do that a little bit, or why are you doing it like this? So there's still a lot of questions within those grants and within those opportunities, which is fine and great and dandy, because then it is, at least for them, they'll get more of a person that's better in tune with that project or with that opportunity. But at the same time, it's not, I don't know, I feel like sometimes there's not like this like equal perspective. Because even if I've reached out to galleries before and I said, hey, I would like to have an exhibition here, I would like to talk about having a showcase, or what is it that we can look about with these opportunities, or I would like to apply to this mural, here's my concept. Automatically, they're just gonna be like, yeah, but we don't think that certain work doesn't fit here. And it could be maybe I don't fit there, because I don't fit in so artwork, and that's for damn sure, and I'm okay with that. But at the same time, it's like if I'm looking for gallery space, but most of them are like white run or not very inclusive to certain ideas and perspectives within different types of art forms, sometimes it could get a little harder. So like I said, with grants, it's great, we have higher culture, we have a lot of different things, and I'm always on them looking up stuff, but at the same time, once you look between the lines and start really getting down to nitty gritties, it's like all these check marks kind of balance back and forth. So I think what they're doing is great in terms of opening themselves up, but it's a process. Like everybody else has a process, so hopefully, I think we're definitely in a good place now. Like the Underground Mural Project, like Emma was out there volunteering, I was volunteering, and a lot of us are, like the ones in the street art world. So it's cool that they can do this thing now, because they didn't have that when they were starting in Boston and things like that. So things are opening up, just in a pace that I guess we're not used to because of Boston's roots compared to other people's roots. So.
But you've also been able to find like alternatives as well, like for instance.
I'm not about to wait for y'all to open something up. I'll go find my own.
Exactly. I just went to get tacos last night at Casa Verde and JP, and I was like, oh my god, what is this art up on the walls? Yeah. It's all Rixy's. Gosh, this is beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like I'm not a person that cheats the system, but I'm definitely gonna find what's the best way for me to do it. So if I have to hit up somebody at a studio and I'm like, yo, you have a really pretty wall, but let me make it better. What's up? Nice. Or, like I'll just kind of broadcast certain ideas and things like that in the way that's like, I tell this to my students, I love rejection so much. Because it's like, maybe that wasn't the right one for me. Like a while back I had gotten rejected from something, and I was like, damn, that sucks, because I thought that was going to be perfect for me. I don't really understand why. And then the week after, I got accepted to something that was probably a lot better for me as an individual. And I was like, oh, that's why. So like sometimes that rejection is like a good thing, and that's where I kind of like piggyback on that first comment of like sometimes the no or whatever limitations are happening is support and like fuel for more and kind of things like that. Or again, finding another wall or whatever spot I can do next. Like how do I find what I need or want?
Yeah, I don't know if I love rejection.
I don't mind it. I'm not saying I love it, but
Yeah, I do know that that's a rejection to me is a means, another means of getting to a yes. You know, so you can use rejection as a growth medium. That's what in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, we had a program that we called Art Attacks. Okay, where we would go out on the street or in very unlikely places, and we'd throw up instant art shows.
that's cool.
You know, before the cops came, you know, we were up, had the show, we were down,
That's
we were
nice.
someplace else. You have to be audacious, I suppose is the word, as a creative person, and you have to take chances. And especially in a town like Boston that loves to ignore people of color, you gotta make some noise. You gotta get out there and make some noise.
I've noticed a lot of times once you make the noise, then that gets people's attention, and then the
Yeah.
Oh
money
yeah,
follows.
where have you been all my life? You know, I've been standing on the corner shouting at you. That's where I've been. But,
These are, yeah.
excellence is a weapon. Excellence, I have a T-shirt that says that. It's a weapon that you can't defend against. It has to be used with humility and honesty, but you cannot defend against excellence. It will always win out in the end.
Right. So that makes me wonder what makes an excellent artist, you know, an artist that's self-taught. A lot of people think that education could make you an excellent artist. I'm curious how education has played into your careers. Do you think that your education has necessarily made it better or that you've benefited from it?
My education in Boston arts, whew, wow. So I was definitely one that didn't realize I wanted to be educated in art, and I was always self-taught when I was younger. Like I moved around a lot. Art wasn't really accepted in a lot of forms around me. So I needed to teach myself because I was like, I want to do this thing. And if nobody's going to teach me, well, I'm in the day and age of experimenting, and then magical Google appeared, so, and YouTube. So it was like I was part of that generation that like had to get a feel of how to do both. Like, how do I go out and look for it myself, and then how can I use my resources, since it's a lot more of a flow nowadays. But I think that it was always like that, unfortunately. Like, I've not been in a setting where other students were art students themselves. Like, rarely did that happen at UMass. Like, maybe one or two other people in a room of 20, where everybody else was taking it as an elective for their major, because science major required them to take an arts class. So it was like 3 of us were very concentrated, taking the full advantage of that workshop. Everybody else just like turning some like cotton ball glued a plastic cup for a 4-credit damn sculpture class. The hell you doing? Like, no. Like, and it would, you know, infuriate us because we are like sweating day and night, staying at the studio late nights, and that allowed me to really have conversations with myself and look for those resources that I wanted, because it's like, if I'm not in this pool of things happening, I definitely learned, like, by trial and error what things I wanted to learn and what things I didn't want to learn. And personally, that's how I operate, so I liked that more than being fed too many things or being around too many other things. I'm like, if I don't need these certain influences around me, then I don't need to put it in my way. So I felt like I because of that, I had the opportunity to put things where I wanted to put them a little more, but I'm not saying that the education helped me do that. Like, they were just there. I just paid for it. I just paid hundreds and thousands of dollars for it, but I definitely felt like my professors, if I asked them a specific question, they would help me. But generally, they kind of just tried to touch base because they had a wide range of people that probably didn't take it seriously. But they did. So it was like, again, I just have to look for the resource that I'm looking for. If I'm like, hey, got a question. How do I make a foldable, big-ass, like, statue thing real quick? Just help me out real quick. And then they're like, oh, sure, I have the answer. But it's not like they were going to teach that in class, you know? So it was definitely like, hey, when I first started exhibiting, I was like, what is this artist statement thing? How do I do an application like years ago? Like, I didn't know what I was looking for, and they didn't have a class on any of that, but I was like, oh, I saw this thing online, like, what do I do, Prophet? And then he's just like, yeah, well, if you send one to me, then I'll help you out, maybe. But all of this was like on the sideline type stuff. Like, it was not during class hours, so it was definitely kind of make it how you wanted to make it.
Isn't that weird how classes are not the same as like making art in real life? A lot of things happen organically when you're an artist making art or learning how to make art, but then when you have to repackage it as a class, a lot of things are missed.
Yeah, I took one class at Mass Art and I just wanted to get the feel of that environment, and it was interesting to be around other people. Like, I definitely found what makes it feel good, why people go to these schools and things like that, but just as the person that I was individually, I was like, okay, I'll just go back.
There's a different kind of competition when you're around all artists too. So I feel like that can drive you in different ways.
Right, depends on the person, yeah.
When I was in visual arts, there were two schools, two opposing camps. The first was commercial illustrator artists, and the second camp was like fine art, you know, when we were fine artists were like the hippie bums, you know, dirty communists. So I straddled both roles because I came out of commercial art. I was a printer, and I loved fine art, and I didn't let anybody dictate me. And I also found that I had to unlearn when I graduated School of Visual Arts. There was almost as much to unlearn as I had to learn. You know, there were a lot of preconceived things. You know, I got so sick and tired of those Madonna and child paintings, you know, muscular little kid with the big head and stuff, you know. I failed when I wrote papers criticizing that stuff. I failed those. I had to tell them, you know, this is not me, you know. But, you know, I taught preschool art in Dimmick for 8 years. And I love my babies to this day. I see them like in Stop and Shop. Mr. Larry, you know. And I remember this one little girl, she was Dominican, and she had a deformed arm. I think it was her right arm. And she used to keep it like this. She was very self-conscious of it, you know. She was the best artist I have ever seen. Every once in a while you run into a child that's got such talent it's almost scary. And when I saw her do her artwork, I just started throwing all kinds of crayons and paints. She was amazing. Yeah. And I had the privilege of being at the beginning of these young lives. And I think if you haven't tried it, you should. If you love kids, you should try that experience. I did it for 8 years. They let me off from good behavior, but it was something that I will always treasure and never forget.
For me, I think there's a ton of different kind of ways about it. Well, I thought about this outside of here, and I thought, what has art education done for me? And I think, honestly, the most that it's done for me is, I think, one, this is kind of, I think it gave me an excuse, right? One, right? And the excuse to some degree to say that I'm doing something, right? But also, it also made it so that I had time to do that something that I wanted to do. In terms of idea-wise, in terms of skill-wise, I feel like that time is really what defined that for me. Actually, I would say that oftentimes, you know, the courses that I took, sometimes most often got in the way of, like, I think about this period of my art education. There was a point where I was making a lot of artwork having to do with myself in relation to someone else or to another population, you know, the white population, and kind of fighting that. And I was kind of like, wait, I don't really want to make art about, you know, my reaction to other people. I really want to make art about me that helps me move forward. And I think that really speaks to that unlearning piece of creating art for who. So I find that when I was in the classroom, and the traditional set or the ideology for a classroom is the teacher that's in front of you is the professional. and they're teaching you and they know what's right and they're the person. But in the place I was always kind of like, no, you're not right. You don't know this. And I definitely remember a point where that was short for me, where I was in a class and they were talking about pop art, and then in the whole class there was no mention of Basquiat, and I was just kind of like, and then I had to take the role of kind of teaching about Basquiat, and I was like, this feels very basic, and I'm really, and even the presentation, I thought, yeah, this is kind of like a basic understanding of who that person is. And so I think time is really one of the key aspects of school. Just being able to invest a lot of it was also interrupted as well. So that piece is for me, but I would say in terms of artistic education, there's the difference of, for instance, I've been in the capacity where I've taught other individuals, and I find that, as you mentioned, presenting a project and just kind of letting it happen and presenting materials has been such a transformative way for me to kind of, it forms the relationships with my professors. Those are the ones that I find that I appreciate the most. The ones that just kind of say, let's do a project, here's everything. And those have been super transformative for me. But the ones where it's like, hey, I'm telling you, you got to do this, that's not really how art works. So it's not a framework for art education at all.
I'm so glad that you mentioned Basquiat, because I have a painting called Shitholia, and it has elements.
Translation, please.
Use it in a sentence.
It has elements of Basquiat in the painting. It also has elements of childish
Gambino.
Yep. And it also has like a Native American on one side. And the legend says, and I like legends in painting, that, I can remember, in 1789, the country of Shitholia sent Haitian fighters to Georgia to help the American revolutionaries win against the British in the Battle of Savannah. Okay, so when you hear these sitcom presidents talk about shithole countries, it's good to educate people that some of these people from so-called shithole countries are the foundation of America, you know, and it's through their efforts that this country came into existence. Okay, this man, forgive my politics, but I get so angry at hearing this man disparage people of color when he's sitting in the White House, which was built by slaves. Okay, so that's why I say my work is becoming more political nowadays. I'm trying not to make it too angry, you know, because yeah, but anger is a part of art. Anger is supposed to move you. Sometimes it's supposed to make you laugh. Sometimes it's supposed to piss you off. But it's what I do. And I'm old enough that I don't give a bleep. You know, if it's in my heart, I'm gonna let it out.
Right. Someone did mention art is political, like whether it be the actual art or the way that you're getting the resources and the means and the knowledge to make art. So I don't know, while you guys were speaking, I was just thinking about education and the theme of the show, Inner City Circle, and how generations are sharing knowledge across time, across all of our experiences. And I definitely like this type of learning a little better. I don't know if you guys agree, but just having that organic, I was thinking about the classroom and about how the teacher is at the front and they're assumed to be the expert. But when you don't really know them and you're kind of just admitted into the school and you're sitting in a seat, yeah, you have to follow the rules, but there's a different element of trust when I've seen you in the community, I've seen your murals on walls, and now I get to sit next to you and hear your gems, or I see your artwork. This is a type of education I think Hoodgrown can fuck with. All right, going forward, so we definitely support this.
I mean, also I like to, I did, one of these projects were definitely based on experiential research, so in doing it, I really wanted to go to Haiti and find out my cultural essence or really my background. And I remember going into a schoolyard in Haiti, the country, that doesn't have much, right? And all those kind of concepts about them. But I went into the schoolyard, and it was just an open space. It was an art school, open space, and students were just moving left and right and creating work as they went. And I was just like, this is kind of where I want to create.
Yeah.
There was so much energy within it, and there was clearly a huge interest in going and actually pushing towards creating that. And so actually one of my overarching projects really is, it's taken a break because of political things happening, but is to really connect that vibrancy of creativity with the I think really in the art educational pieces that I've noticed or that I've gone through, there's just been like a stasis. And it's not about moving left and right. You stay within the classroom, and then you stay within your studio space and you create. Don't take it outside. And so really part of my education was really figuring out a way to bridge those two worlds. And so that's still something that's happening.
By the way, the next time you go home, tell them that Larry Pierce personally thanks them for their service.
Pass that
Thanks
message
for
along.
helping us create this country.
I just want to kind of expand on this question to continue it with the education aspect. But do you feel like your education has granted you some kind of validation or kind of marked you as kind of an official artist that you may have not gotten from being self-taught? Or do you feel like it's granted you access to the art world that you may not have known about? Is it granted you being able to access different artists that have maybe come into the city that have been, essentially when artists come into the city, they're just there to talk to students and then they're out. Like they're not there to talk to the public. So have any of those opportunities popped up for you that you feel like has made a big change or difference in your life? And all of you guys are involved in education additionally to obviously you guys have been trained in different ways, but you guys are all teachers or administrators and you're in education, the education field as employees as well. So how does that change the art world to you?
Sounds cool.
Start with Rixy.
I think you said first, kind of the opportunities within our schools and the education that we've gotten forward or directly. That validation for me wasn't really hitting all that well. Since middle school, again, I was always doing art, but I wasn't in settings where it was accepted and things like that. Within high school, I was always just kind of doodling on myself on my uniforms. I went to schools with uniforms, so I was just whatever. I'm just gonna draw in class or doodle on my work. And I think eventually once I got to college, it was the same thing that certain things weren't around or I had to find it. But I think at the end, I had eventually won a scholarship within school for a scholarship in our art department that nobody applies to. Just again because it was kind of just overlooked as an opportunity within our school that doesn't really focus on the arts. So that's why they were just why don't you just apply? Literally, there's always 2 people that apply every year and they get it. They just split it because it's might as well. And so I think at that point it was a very turning point for me where I was just wow, this self-taught, because I do still say I'm self-taught. I can't really see where I would validate my overall education and what they've been able to do. But I do say that moment was very validating for me, and it helped me kind of find that push from graduation and going into real world art, because I think that's a very hard, confusing, paused moment. Is that summer after graduation where you're just I'm an adult, wait, no, there's no homework, no finals, no critiques to do. So it's there's a lot of things that it probably wasn't direct, but it was there. And then as an educator and being in those systems, I realized what I really wanted to teach my kids. What I wish was around when I was in high school, middle school, elementary school, and all these different ages. I'm I really want to be able to show you guys what this is, because that wasn't there when I was here, and stuff like that. So if I try to show them things, I'm showing or teaching them more on creativity based, rather than here we're all gonna just draw a still life of an apple really well. It's more what do you like to do? Like, you might get comic book artists. Like, most of my kids just want to draw Dragon Ball Z all day. And so there's always that student, or somebody that wants to do super abstract things. And it's like, you're going to have individuals, so just help the individual grow. And I think as an educator, sometimes they, like, miss that message, like within BPS at certain times, that they miss the message of, like, you're growing individual students. And so that not all of them can learn the same way. Not all of them are going to see things the same way. So it's like you kind of have to show them things that they really don't know is there. And that would be something that I would trail into the college areas, that I'm like, you guys need to, well, at least for my educators, they were smooth sailing, but it's like, kind of, how do you build these artists? How do you build, like, you're an influencer. Teachers are you're teaching. You should just be able to influence, inspire them in their evolution. So I think as an educator, that's been the most transformative part of realizing, like, I'm learning all this stuff for myself, and now I want so badly to help this plant grow and be part of the community and be part of, like, whatever you want to do. Like, I have friends that do something completely different. I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. I don't know what that is. I don't understand it. But, like, yeah, that's so cool. So, like, if you can in any way contribute to that, don't know how, that's kind of, like, really fulfilling within education.
I think for me it's been, I think the way I approach any class or any kind of workshop that I get into is, I'm probably going to learn something. I think primarily because I think I struggle sometimes with thinking, oh, Rocky's the professional and he's going to, lead them this way or that way or this. Because I think, the part about people is they kind of just do whatever they want at the end, no matter what. So I think for me, one of the most inspiring things about a class is getting to figure out what somebody cares about, or the thing that makes them, like, so excited to do that they can't wait to come back the next time. And I think some of my favorite teachers have done that for me, kind of been like, hey, what do you care about, kid? What are you gonna do? And I think that's been, like, a framework that I really use for any course that I've, like, interacted with. And I think, and that's really one of the themes, that's how it kind of factors in. I think about different cultures and how they have different, like, pieces that people really hold on to. And I think for each individual, there's, like, a piece of your culture, whether it's clear to you or not, like, that you just really hold on to. And I love to kind of get to that point and figure out what that is for different individuals. And that's really for, the side of, being in a classroom and teaching. I think in the sense of being, like, working as an admissions counselor and getting to see the art piece. And I think it's sometimes clear to me the students that have had a teacher who've helped them honestly to define what they care about, and the student that that's just had a teacher that's just been like, yay, that's great, stick figures, yay. And and that's very clear when I look at it. And a variety of different students will have work that doesn't really meet, like, the experiences that they could. And I think sometimes that is really, because I think once you get on that highway, I would say, of, like, figuring out, I care about this, I care about my family, I care about, politics, I care about this or that, that is really, like, the thing that really escalates you to becoming an artist that says something. Because I think people can draw, you can develop that skill set, but really it's about developing what you want to say. And I think those are the things that are different from, like, the other side of being, a teacher or administrator kind of thing. But I think I'm taking those same things that I loved, that motivated me, to the other side as well. Yeah.
When you're 70 years old, you start telling stories. That's something you have to guard against, It's like you go over to a friend's house and they break out a photo album, and you're like, oh, Jesus, there's like 12,000 photographs I gotta look at. But here's a story.
Here's one.
I took an adult learning class in Brookline for beginning guitar, okay? And I walked into the wrong classroom. And this young black dude, he must have been about 20, he looked like Jimi Hendrix. He was flying over the keyboard, you couldn't see his fingers, And I'm like, I'm in the wrong damn class. He said something to me that was liberating. He said, did you know that George Benson is self-taught? And I said, say what? He said, George Benson is self-taught. So I started packing up my guitar and I decided it, And I've been playing in my living room ever since, And I rock. As long as nobody else hears me, I'm Jimi Hendrix. Why did I say that? Well, I have a crew. See, I do the whole spectrum. So I have preschool kids, and then I teach at the Catherine Drexel Community Room. And I call these my senior crew, And we rock too, because these elderly ladies are just so enthusiastic. They're like kids. They're as bigger kids as my kids in preschool. The last thing we did was bonsai, right? And I was teaching them about the concept of bonsai. There's no such thing as a bonsai tree. You can make a bonsai out of everything, and what makes a bonsai beautiful, it's more the trunk than it is the canopy of the leaves and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then we started creating these bonsai. So, learning is universal. Learning spans generations. If you're not having, and this is the first thing I tell them before I begin any workshop, if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. Okay, this is the place where you're supposed to, who's the guy was on television? Bob Ross. He used to say, there's no mistakes, there's happy accidents. And that's my credo, that's what I believe in.
How have local galleries and or museums impacted your career? And a show like this, how has that impacted your understanding of local artists? And as well as what opportunities have some museums been granting to you, or have you seen museums granting to local artists?
When I first came back to Boston and I'm looking up what is the arts in Boston, obviously that's the first thing that comes up. So there was a while where I was like, I just really need to be involved with that area because I don't know anything else, which is normal, especially within high school if you don't really know anything else. So I found my ways to be involved, and the more and more I looked into it, the more I became a little more comfortable with the area. I'm just realizing who I am as an artist and how I play within that area, because of course it provides a lot of opportunities for that demographic, and not necessarily race-wise, but demographic of art, topics conceptually. And that's another, that's kind of the expanding ideas, finding galleries and museums that are more attuned to you or that you could connect with is great at any level, and finding what works. So with SOA, I found just time and distance between me and all these galleries in the way that I'm just I'm just not sure anymore. There was a while where I was like, oh, I would love to be there. And while working there, I learned about these spaces, and I'm like, I don't think we would connect. I don't think we would have a full relationship. I like the work that they have up, but I'm not sure if it would work with me in the ways that I would want it to. But there are different ways of working around that. So there is actually a space called Flowering Rock, and it's a very small, tiny, little intimate gallery. And they've, on the relatively new side, and opened up doors for certain artists and certain of my friends that have been able to connect with them, and to the point where now they're offering me to have a little solo show in September, which, just found out about this. Little plug talk. But it's okay, now I've found that compromise. How can I be more involved in the arts communities and these direct kind of ways, rather than always trying to find, the holes in the underground ways of doing what I'm doing. But at the same time, still stick true to what I am and be able to be something new within that area and be part of that kind of transforming circle, like ourselves in this show here. We are part of the circle that is transforming the way that we view art within the city. And I still say how I love how this was curated. We haven't had many shows. I don't remember shows. I don't know if I've been to any shows that are so well mixed with people of color within Boston-based artists, and across different themes and different things like that. Of course, I've gone to my street art stuff, my graffiti boys things, my own personal illustration stuff, but having like this great mix to where it's like this is the actual art of Boston. This is the actual things that we should be seeing around, not just like paintings of a lighthouse on Cape Cod with a single. Yeah. But you know what I mean. It's just like there's that line of highbrow, lowbrow. Every community has their own versions of those, but I think those identifiers aren't really the most effective way of saying what's actual local artists and compared to what Boston themed art is. I think there is a big difference because they're not showing enough light on what actual Boston artists are. Most Boston artist shows that they have at SOA and things like that, they're not even from Boston. So, honestly, but yeah.
I think that it's like, for me, I think, particularly this year, being outside of school, I think it's that I'm more so in that unlearning space, where I think I'm very careful about like the work that I do and how it influences me and my. So I don't know that I've been as kind of like tenacious in terms of opportunities so far, but I do find that like in different organizations and different spaces, I'll find myself being motivated by different artists or actually you guys to create. And so really, I think this year I was kind of like, hey, let me take a little bit of kind of distance from this thing that I know I have so much passion for, and I've seen it. I've stayed up multiple days, and I'm very aware that art is something that is not like the actual creation, where it actually is my thought process. Like I'll be in conversations with folks, and I'll just be like, ooh, and then they'll be like, what? And I'm like, sorry, don't mind that. And it's really something that I've just kind of characterized as part of my character. It's just like I'll think artistic ideas, everything I do. So I think it's been very interesting just within that mental space that I've been in, to still be very, like, I actually can't stop. And so it's such I wouldn't say an obsession, it's like a release from a variety of different things. And so I think that does speak a lot to what y'all are doing in terms of connecting with artists at various points in their career. And I think this year also highlights me being connected to various artists that I've just seen at space and been like, wow, you're so far away. So
right next to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, wow, okay. I'm right next to. So it's definitely humbling, and definitely speaks to the amount of work that I've kind of invested in this. And I think in terms of galleries, I think Dorchester Art Project has been very awesome. And I had a space there for a little bit, and I think it just kind of revealed to me like the youthful population that's super, or the population that I'm a part of as well, that's super intrigued and interested in creating not just something that's in the past, but moving forward with something that's kind of us in some direction. And so I don't know if that really answered your question about galleries, but I think more specifically for me, it's just been like kind of taking it a little low key before I do something that's going to be really grand. I don't know what that is yet, but that's really the thought process. And I think for me too, my art is very emotional. And I'll talk to some folks who are interested in my work, and I'm like, sometimes I'll just look at my work, and because it does involve a lot of emotional and thought processes that I don't want to get into. Really, that's what I use it for. So those are the things, and so so that's my response to that.
That's good.
Has anybody seen that show, Adam Ruins Everything?
I love that show!
If you haven't seen it, check out the episode on fine art.
Yeah, it's okay.
I
Okay?
haven't seen that.
Because it's bullshit.
It's funny. Yeah, it's.
In the beginning scene, this guy is in a studio, and this young lady is at the easel, and she's getting ready to paint, and the guy accidentally stumbles and bumps into her, and she does a line over the canvas, and he says, that's fantastic. It's so dynamic. Okay. A lot of Boston's art, not just Boston, a lot of the art scene in this country, in this world, is based on the emperor's clothes. And the fact that the emperor is naked, just like in Washington. The emperor has no clothes, okay? My teachers were traditional, Louise Bourgeois, Jonathan Borofsky, these guys are in the MFA all over the place, Paul Waldman. And they were very, very dynamic and very abstract and envelope pushers, but they were substantive. They did things that had meaning, and they weren't trying to con you like, you know, like diamonds. The De Beers company put this false value on diamonds, like diamonds are forever. Now everybody has to buy one when he gets engaged, and it's a pretty common rock, okay? So basically, my point is that, and I'll take it back to the weapon of excellence. I don't care if you're doing a line on the canvas. If you're committed to that line, if you're committed to what you're doing, then nobody can defend or excuse or dismiss that, because that's the essence of what I do. I'm committed I'm committed to excellence, okay? And when I want to make a political statement because I'm outraged that these people, these soulless vampires in Washington are saying that children don't need soap and they don't need blankets, you know, and they don't need breakfast. I mean, we'll just put them in a cage and shit, or send them to Milwaukee. Somebody from Honduras can really make it in Milwaukee. That's the passion of my art, and it's reflected on my canvas. And like I said before, I've decided it's who I am. I'm 70 years old. That's what I'm going out on.
Word.
Didn't mean to sound so fatalistic, but you guys are talking about the younger generation. It's well, here's from the past. Can I tell you, we're still here. We're still kicking ass. And we're kicking names and taking ass.
That part. Let's change the subject just a little bit. This, like we said, we really want to make sure that the community is able to appreciate and celebrate art the same way well-resourced neighborhoods are able to. We're so happy to have this gallery right in Upton Squanner. But a lot of places aren't as accessible. A lot of museums don't feel welcoming. We had that recent incident that happened at the Museum of Fine Arts that got the community very engaged and riled up, rightfully so, regarding young students of color entering the space and feeling welcome. What would you say to anyone who believes that museums are only for older, rich, white people and not for people like us?
I'm going to halt this for a second. Because did you come to that meeting that they had at the museum?
I did not.
There's a new woman who's, I forget her title, but she's a black woman and she's like the highest, she's very
The
high
chief
up.
of education, Makiba.
Yeah.
Carrie.
Okay.
She's my boss.
Well, she had a fantastic meeting. There were a lot of artists of color that were there. Paul Goodnight, Ekla Holmes, Nina La Negra, and basically they were addressing directly the problem of the whiteness and the exclusivity of the museum. And, you know, like I said before in my thing, you gotta make noise, okay? And the people there, I'm so proud of them, they were making noise, okay? And as a result of their making that noise and the continuation of the noise that they're making, I think they're gonna be big changes in institutes like the Museum of Fine Arts or the Isabella Stewart and museums like that that were exclusively for a certain segment of the population. So it's a good time to be an artist of color in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But you still gotta make noise. You can't sit back on your ass. You still gotta make noise. Okay?
I agree.
I like that. I think there's definitely some like kind of evolution that's happening, and it's slow progress for sure. Like not as fast as some of us obviously would like, but it's okay because we still have a lot of things to do and to work on to continue to help. Once that noise is heard, that it's the loudest noise that they've made, you know what I mean? Like I don't want you to be looking for a whisper, like I want that to slap in your face kind of thing. And so even with the museums and the galleries, if they're not paying attention, then that's not the one I'm really calling out to anyway. My blowhorn isn't your way. That's okay. Like, so the museums and galleries that are a little more attained to us, like they're on our side, you know, and we've made that connection first. That way we could build that noise, and it is more community-based. So if it is Dorchester Art Project, like, and I've stayed with them for a while because I'm like, all right, you're the ones helping build noise. Let's keep on finding where else to do it, you know, and then we start building with more organizations, more people, and it's like, it's going to be a little bit of cruise control for a second until that next kind of thing is able to continue to be on your team. But I definitely think there's things that are opening up and transforming. Like I remember the MFA, like I used to love MFA when I was a child. It was awesome, and then they had a contemporary wing, and even more excited. And like 2 years ago, I think I went to an exhibit, and it was the funniest thing in the world, probably my favorite exhibit ever, because it like literally was something I would never expect MFA to do. Like this woman, I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but she had a lot of like editorial magazines, very like kind of retro style, or just like an array of. I didn't look at the content. I looked at the thing that made it fun. So she had that kind of collaged everywhere, and these basic design elements, like very Bauhaus type design with these editorials. And then she just drew little like childish penises everywhere. I live it. I went off because I was just like, thank you, MFA. Like, what is this? Like, that's like such a little like, you know, Easter egg. And I was like, okay, so you're opening up to certain concepts. So I was a very like, I'm so harsh on people when they don't allow certain concepts. I'm like, why? You see a naked woman, you see titties, wow. Again, Renaissance pictures have that, and all these things, like why are you making such a big deal about it? You see graffiti, why are you putting some type of label on what that is? And things like that. So I always like questioned what museums and galleries really allowed, because I'm just like, so you take this over the other, which is fine if you need to stay true to your like concepts rather than downplaying others. But I was like, okay, like MFA is opening up to certain things. Or I saw galleries and museums. I think it is an educational conversation, because even, you know, we might not know everything, and if we find that certain things are stubborn and, you know, closed off, maybe they just needed that right conversation to open up their perspective. And unfortunately, like Massachusetts, it's kind of rooted on this very closed-minded idea. And it just takes all of us as a whole to kind of like, here's how we're going to educate you on what's actually going on, and how you open and broaden yourself if that is what if that's your intention with this conversation. So it's like, once you are into that, I do think that there is a moment of like, it's trying. I just like the word trying in progress a lot for us, because I definitely think about moving many, many times again. But I'm just like, I don't know, I see it a little bit, you know, like you see Pro Black doing a big ass wall, that's something. He's representing for all the graffiti writers in Boston and all the street art heads, like all of them, or, you know, things like that. So it's like, we're seeing it little by little, but it definitely is like not going out without a fight kind of thing. It's not just like, sure, yeah, we heard you, we'll do it, no problem. It's like, we gotta annoy a little bit, which is fine, I don't care. Like, we're in your face all day long. And I think that's what happens with all these things, like needing community meetings and things like that. It requires these moments like, we all need to take action, right? You guys all here with me? Boom, all right, we'll do it. So I think there's hopes and positivity within that realm.
I don't know, this question kind of sent me down the path of art history and how anybody who goes to like art school, you're riddled with experiences or multiple classes where you're considering those same pieces, where it's kind of like stale, boring. Yeah, I just like, look at the smoky skin. And I mean, I think if you're an artist who's kind of established, you can go into those spaces and definitely get some sort of, you know, like it's a testament to skill and time frame. And so I think the question was about whether it's useful to go in to see those spaces and to see those. And I think truly as an artist, looking at, you know, images gives use some sort of, like, images that have a testament to time and effort. That's important, yes. And but I think when it becomes unimportant, when it's like you're only seeing one of like one representation, as was mentioned. So I think it's kind of the same thing as the art history, and there's so much that supports the fact that, you know, these spaces continue to be as they are. You know, one, being in a classroom or being in a school, and through 3 years of the experience, I only considered the same pieces every year. And then I had to really want to, I had to really ask to be, you know, to then receive or be in a class that had to do, and I had to do a lot of research to find out that there was a class that connected to those things and spoke about artists who are not only, you know, in the US, but international artists who are creating work about their culture and who exist, you know. And so it could be very alienating to be an artist, and sometimes, you know, as an artist you create work and you know that you're alone, but sometimes, you know, it's kind of like I'm creating work that's kind of, it seems obvious, and I shouldn't really be alone in this. So I think in galleries there's not much exposure to those different you know, experiences, and I think they are definitely scratching at it for sure. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day. It was about creating diversity, and the other term was oh dang it, I forgot the name of the word, but it was something about saturating and really bringing it to a point of how about what happens when you have 50% of the work depicting work by, you know, people who are of completely different backgrounds, you know, whether it's like, you know, Hispanic, Latino, you know, Haitian, all those kind of things. What happens when you normalize that, you know? And so how do you influence the next generation to be more fearless about the things that they're doing? And so I think there's definitely scratches, like when I go to a gallery these days, I just know, oh, that's that little area with that. But and I always make it a point to appreciate those, as y'all make it a point to do so. I think it just takes, you know, me taking an interest in those and then really digesting it and saying that I love seeing that example of work. So is enough happening? Is it interesting? For the most part, no. Are they? No. It's just a bunch of those images. Yep.
To close out, what would you entitle your retrospective exhibition?
Oh.
This is a big question. Like, at the end, when you're long gone and your art is all here, what would you entitle your retrospective?
Well, you guys are hip to Men in Black, right?
Yeah.
So, I was gonna wear the starched white shirt and stingy and shit, you know, but I decided not to be so dramatic.
But still.
So
But
dramatic.
still.
I do want to tell you that.
Men in Black logo on the side.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to tell you that I'm the anti-Men in Black, because instead of keeping aliens from invading us, I want to make this country live up to its creed, okay? We are immigrants. This is an immigrant country. Diversity and immigration is what made us strong. So I'm not welcoming aliens from Rigel 4, but I damn sure am welcoming children from Honduras, you know? And I want to make my art reflect the fact that arts and artists have a responsibility to address injustices wherever they see it. Okay? Now, I want everybody to look at this pen. Okay, I don't have to write.
I don't.
Yeah. Sorry. So that's it. Get involved, stay involved. You're an artist, it's your responsibility. You're on a mission from God.
Okay. So for me, that was a really tough question.
Yeah, I know.
That was such a tough question
That
for
was
me.
the point.
It's because yeah. So I'll read this, because I was like, let me write something down. I think retroactive growth was one. Because I think about, because my art is self-centered. I will say that in the sense, but I think it's not self-centered in the way that, it's all about me, because it's more of, I can't understand somebody else unless or comprehend somebody else completely until you can never really completely understand somebody else. But you can't have that bridge to understand somebody else unless you've kind of done that work personally and done the work yourself. So I think for me that retroactive growth really speaks to considering the things I let go of or didn't pay as much attention to in the past, and then growing to that space. But I don't know. I don't know why I came up with this title. I think this really kind of spoke more to me. It's returning to where I was better than I am. I don't know what it means yet, but it's really where.
I do.
You know what it means?
Yeah.
Please tell me.
I'll tell you after the show.
Oh, sweet, yeah.
It's very understandable.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's still some things going on here. So
We
but
got some time, hopefully.
Yeah, you definitely.
yeah. But I think partly I always think about like my work wherever I see it. It takes me back to a mental space or emotional space where I was. It might have not been great. It might have not been, pretty. But I think it was just like that's really something that I like. It's an assumption of what I think has brought that title. But returning to where I was better than I am. That's what I think it would be.
I've actually thought about this already. When you're, I don't know about everybody, but when I was younger, I always thought about what my wedding would be like, and I didn't think about who I was going to get married. I just knew what it was going to be like. It could be to myself for all the thing that matters. But I've definitely thought about like what my dream show would be like, and I don't have all the details because I'm still living my career. And still kind of growing in it, but I've always thought of it of being like an interlude or some type of like intertwined interlude, very kind of classical in this way of like a moonlit serenade. Like I have that song playing in my head the whole time, and like all this like kind of soft jazzy noise. And I think it's a lot because I've put myself in situations in life where it's not just being a painter, like I'm an artist through and through, a creative through and through, in the way that like the way I assemble my outfits, the way that I assemble a conversation, or how I interact with music, how I interact with nature, my physical, mental, emotional beings, or the way that I interact and connect with your physical, mental, emotional beings. So I think my, this kind of exhibition and idea of all my work would be how I've reflected my interactions and intertwined myself within natural growths, because I am my own like kind of plant growing in this world, and it's an interlude because I've created my moment within this life, like you guys have your own moments. I am going to be a moment that is somebody's past and somebody's art history, and that was an interlude of life where it was like life paused for my purpose and allowed me to live my purpose, and now it's creating all these other like chapters for other people. And also it would be 2D, 3D, interactive, immersive. It would have all these great elements of what is part of me. It would be a thing of the senses if it came to all the things that I actually am a part of and I know how to do and created within myself. So I think it's going to be, because again, I already know what it looks like. It has all these elements that's kind of just like a reflection of how I've grown within the world around me and life around me, because it's just still weird to me. Like, I think of life as a video game, because I'm like, I know there's a reset button somewhere. I know I got one more life. I know I can do this over. Or I know that there's going to be another life, so I can continue to make it a different way every single time. So I think that's kind of how I would look at it.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
We can open it up for a couple of questions if anyone in the crowd has a question. Larry, we'll be right back.